we're gonna cover quite a few stories regarding Lula in Brazil. A lot of interesting developments, and this is why I was like, man, Lula is based on what he was saying when he was running regarding foreign policy. I was like, man, he's being very aggressive, and he had followed through on a few of those things. Now there's this new trade deal with China, and there was a recent vote where Brazil is the only Brazil, along with China and Russia, are the only countries that was like, yeah, let's investigate the Nord Stream pipeline shit. So Lula is like straight up rebuking the West consistently now. Rebuked them on Palestine, rebuked them on Cuba, called out NATO and Zelensky for peace. And now he's like, man, yeah, let's investigate the Nord Stream pipeline. So all the progressives who are ignoring this story, Rashida Tlaib asked about Nord Stream pipeline. Oh, man, this fucking peasant shit. I ain't talking about that. Now, this is Anthony Blinken, before I get to the story, right? You guys know I gotta craft these things out. So Cy Hirsch dropped a bombshell of the United States involvement in Nord Stream bombing, which is makes sense. Like anyone who denies that is up. It's so ridiculous for people who pretend that Russia did this. They want an investigation. The United States and the West are trying anything they can to block investigations. But people think Russia did it. Why would they bomb their own pipeline? You have Western leaders that say it'll be in our best interest. You have Biden that said they will do something about Nord Stream pipeline if Russia ever invaded Ukraine. But you have dumbass NATO leftists, as you guys can tell, who I disdain. I have disdain for these people. The same way I have disdain for Sean Hannity. They are our opposition. They're not good faith. The NATO left and Rashida Tlaib, the TYT left, the majority report left, they are openly ignoring Cy Hirsch reporting on the Nord Stream pipeline. Not only are they ignoring the reporting, they're ignoring the story in general. The people who care about peace, they are ignoring one of the biggest instances of eco-terrorism that we have seen by a government in years. Bernie not interested. All the progressive journalists not interested. Let me show you guys what Blinken is saying. Aaron Monte interested, right? Who a lot of these TYT people smear as right wing. But Aaron Monte interested about who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So this is Anthony Blinken, who denies to this day the role in the U.S. Nord Stream bombing. But this is Aaron Monte. He said Blinken denies U.S. role in Nord Stream bombing. Not that I put it past him to lie, but I'd like to see this question put to Jake Sullivan and William Burns. In her story, they're the two principals with direct knowledge of the plan to bomb Nord Stream. So let's hear the clip that he
implore you on that. Move to a question. Last September, Nord Stream pipelines were blown up. You're now in a formal setting. Can you assure the world that no agency of the U.S. government blew up those pipelines or facilitated that?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
So is he under oath there, right? I mean, I should look into that, but he's under oath, isn't he? Anyway, just straight up lying. Our government just rank lying about this, but no one in the West gives a fuck. That's the rules-based order that they want people to fight and die for. They want Ukrainians to fight and die for. This is the Russia draft resolution establishing a commission to investigate the terrorist attack on the Nord Stream pipeline was rejected at the UN Security Council today. Man, don't you love democracy? Don't you love Western values? Guess who voted in favor of this? Brazil, China, and Russia. Now you got 12 people who abstained. None of them voted against it. My question is, for the people who care about rules-based order, why don't you want to investigate this? And also, good for Lula. Lula, one of the few leaders that is calling out the United States on this. AMLO calling out the United States on this. AMLO has. Lula has. This friend of the show, our friend Fiorella, she tweets out in response to this, those of you pushing this Lula is a Soros puppet are going to have trouble maintaining your superficial reductive analysis on Brazilian politics. And she continues, your opinion on Lula is irrelevant. Brazil is a BRICS country, and they're going to do whatever it takes to rebuild its economy. Now, I'm not saying that Lula is above criticism, but there was dumb analysis where people were saying that the Western government, it mostly come from right-wing populists, to be clear, where they were saying the Western governments, they want to get rid of Bolsonaro because Bolsonaro is the anti-establishment fighter. A fucking Zionist. Bolsonaro is an insane Zionist. Blue liquor of the United States. But people were pretending that he was the anti-Western option. Meanwhile, Lula was on the campaign trail talking about expanding BRICS. Months into the campaign, he was talking about how NATO and Zelensky that fought. Now, I'm not saying Lula is above criticism, but we have to be smart. And people saying that Lula is a Soros puppet, Biden Western puppet, that's not a smart critique. There are critiques to be had, like his position on Haiti. Right? His willingness to form coalitions with neoliberals in his government that affects his economic and neoliberal policies. A lot of climate activists criticize him for drilling. He's pro-drilling. He's extremely socially conservative as well. Like, these are legitimate critiques. Saying that Lula is a Soros puppet, that's shit that right-wingers like Tim Pool and those people were saying. And I kept hearing it repeated. It's ridiculous. Now what Fiorella is pointing out here, right? So what else do I have on this one? Do you guys have anything you want to add to this before I move on? I got to get my notes in order. Let's see what my next part here. Zoya, Andrew going once, going twice.
Just real quick, like the Security Council is always rigged by default because the U.S., France, and the UK are permanent members along with Russia and China. But the other members right now are Albania, Brazil, Ecuador, Gabon, Ghana, Japan, Malta, Mozambique, Switzerland, and the UAE. I don't really know where all of them stand. You know, there's a few I don't really know exactly, like Ghana, Mozambique, Malta, I have no idea. But for sure, a good half of the temporary members, the 2-year term members, are in the U.S. and the West's pocket. You know, Switzerland, Albania, Ecuador right now with a super right-wing, finance oligarch president who's in the pocket of the U.S. for sure. So I got to imagine they're also rigging the, like, how can they decide who's going to be on these councils to make sure nothing gets done? Like, 3 of the most consequential economies in the world said, we'd like to investigate this act of insane terrorism. And everyone else is like, no comment.
It's so, and that show how gangster the United States is too. Because I'm sure that on a moral principle level, a lot of these countries want to see what happened. But the United States said, I fucking dare you, son. I dare you to support investigation into this. Lula now have a new deal. And they have new relationships with China that is expanding, Russia. And I think now I use it to pivot to this part here. Let me share this tab. Here you go. So I will love your thoughts on this, Andrew and Zoya. This is wow, right? China and Brazil struck a deal to ditch the United States dollar. China and Brazil reached a deal to trade in their own currency, ditching the US dollar as an intermediary, which shows the geopolitical power that China has right now. And this shows why Lula is more willing to speak out against the West, because Brazil has a lot of clout as the largest Latin American country. Brazil has by far the largest economy, population larger than the rest of South America combined. It's a giant player that is now making a deal with the biggest enemy of the West, China. And now they feel like they have flexibility to do stuff like this now. Ammo for like Biden in the West is so weak that he can speak out against them. He can form a coalition of Latin American countries to speak out against the Cuban blockade, to call out Biden on NATO, Biden and NATO on Ukraine. for them to call for an investigation of Nord Stream pipeline bombings. This is giant, and I am ecstatic. I told you guys, I'm not hiding the fact that I'm a biased journalist, because seeing countries that have been victim of U.S. imperialism, victim of the West, bullying, now have an option to stand up for themselves, it's great to see. And I did not imagine it was going to happen this fast. And now there's another, I didn't have a chance to look into that. I pulled this here last second. This is a tweet. It said China and France complete first yuan-settled LNG trade, signaling the end of using the U.S. dollar for these energy trades. Bruh, do you guys now see why there's nonstop rank propaganda against China, no matter where? It's in the New York Times, it's in the Washington Post, it's in MSNBC, it's on CNN, it's on Fox News, and not even just Republicans doing it. It's liberal journalists. You see it on Twitter, being straight up xenophobic, posting unhinged garbage about China. And not because they care about the Uyghur population, that they have no evidence that it's being genocided right now. It's because they are freaking the fuck out, because these people hate the concept that the great American project, the great Caucasian people, is no longer on top. They're freaking out that these filthy Chinese people are now trying to overtake the United States. We can't have that. That is the large base of what this is about. Instead of building with China, instead of wanting to form a relationship with China like Brazil and Africa and many other countries doing, we said we must crush them. They got to be a competitor. The fuck that mean? What did that competition have to do with us? How is that improving our quality of life? Oh my God, we gotta be concerned. China spying on us through TikTok. The cops are spying on us via Facebook. You guys know that? We told you guys, don't bring your phone to a protest. Why do you think that is? But you're worried about China and TikTok? Imagine your mind being that colonized, that you worried about the Chinese government spying on us, and we got a militant police state in our country. That's the deeply unserious people. The Marianne Wilsons that was on Glenn Greenwald's show that had to mind you countless times about how the Chinese Communist Party is our enemy. That is not the language that anyone on the left should be using. Now, anyone that I would trust will be using.